I want to present a few pieces of ancient Greco-Roman thought on dreaming and precognitive dreams, paying special attention to Cicero's De Divinatione, one of the most influential writings about divination through dreams of the Roman era. Analyzing one example of prophetic dreams in antiquity, I argue that our 21st century knowledge on dream content and dream functions has not advanced from ancient interpretations and hypotheses as much as one might expect. This is in accordance with trends in classical scholarship because from the beginning of the 21st century, dreams have again become interesting for scholars of antiquity. As you can see, some names and years. The ancients were fascinated by the supernatural phenomena, and the oneirological thinking can be traced back to Mesopotamia and Egypt. Thus, it is not surprising that there is a vast amount of material on dreams and dreaming in the Greco-Roman world. Greek tradition generally agrees in making Zeus the god of dreams since Homer. Let us look at the 20 or so verses from the first book of Iliad. And as you can see, Homer is telling us that Jupiter or Zeus is the god of dreams, and that there are some interpreters of dreams also. Later, the god Hermes succeeded Zeus and added to his numerous other titles that of the guide of dreams. Hesiod called dreams the children of night, and Euripides, dreams are the children of Gaia. By the Pythagoreans, all dreams are not regarded as having the same standing. The true dreams are those of the morning and of the third watch, because food disturbs dreams. There are also several precautions indicated, such as not sleeping upon one's back or upon one's right side, for fear of compressing the viscera. There is even a version given by Plutarch of the origin of the Pythagorean prohibition to eat beans because of their pernicious influence upon dreams. The pioneer of the Greek oneocritical tradition was certainly Antiphon, who in the 5th century BC wrote a treatise Perikriseos Oneiron, of which unfortunately only a few fragments survive. There is a controversy over whether the sophistic works of Antiphon and the treatise on the interpretation of dreams were also written by Antiphon the orator, or whether they were written by a separate man known as Antiphon the sophist. His dream book was probably not much more than a compilation of dream images and their corresponding meanings, following the example of traditional oneocritical tablets, Pinakia Onerocritica. At the same time, he is taking over a principle already well known in the Egyptian and Assyro-Babylonian oneocritical tradition, according to which the meaning of a given dream image varies depending on the gender, age, social rank, and profession of the recipient. On this slide, you can see the sentence from Pseudo-Melampus, which gives us a hint about Antiphon's theory and practice. It says, if the right eye's upper eyelid twitches, it means, at all events, fresh gain. However, according to Antiphon, it means activity and health, evil plotting for the slave, exile for the widow. The greatest Greek philosopher, Plato, also has his thoughts on dreams and predicting the future by dreaming. In Symposium, he places dreams alongside divination, priestcraft, soothsaying, and sorcery under the command of the demonic, to daimonion, as a principle midway between the divine and the human. In Timaeus, as you can see on this slide, Plato introduces a theory of divination by dreams in which the most important role is assigned to the desiring part of the soul. It envisaged as located in the liver, which by means of its smooth and shiny surface serves as a mirror to reflect certain thoughts proceeding from the brain in the shape of images. He says, he fashioned it dense, it means theos, fashioned it dense and smooth and bright and sweet, and yet containing bitterness, that the power of thoughts which proceed from the mind, moving in the liver as in a mirror, which receives impressions and provides visible images, should frighten this part of the soul, who, when the mental power bears down upon it with stern threats, it uses the conjured portion of the liver's bitterness and makes it swiftly suffuse the whole liver, so that it exhibits bilious colors. A characteristic of the dreams of the liver is their highly symbolic character, which can be decoded only by a skillful interpreter of dreams. While divination in this case, just like sickness and frenzy, is conceived of as characterized by aphrosini, a temporary disengagement of reason, we find some diametrically opposed remarks in the Republic. In this dialogue, Plato, once again starting from his doctrine of the tripartite soul, has the various parts of the soul trigger corresponding dream images. I will read you English translation and you will follow the Greek text. "What desires do you mean?" he said. "Those," said I, "that are awakened in sleep when the rest of the soul, the rational, gentle, dominant part, slumbers. But the beastly and savage part, replete with the food and wine, gambles and repealing sleep, endeavors to sally forth and satisfy its own instincts. You are aware that in such case, there is nothing it will not venture to undertake, as being released from all sense of shame and all reason. It does not shrink from attempting to lie with a mother in fancy or with anyone else, man, god, or brute. It is ready for any fool, deed, or blood. It abstains from no food, anyone else, no food in word, falls short of no extreme of folly and shamelessness." "Most true," he said. "But when I suppose a man's condition is healthy and sober, and he goes to sleep after arousing his rational part and entertaining it with fair words and thoughts, and attaining to clear self-consciousness, while he has neither starved nor indulged to repletion his appetitive part, so that it may be lulled to sleep and not disturb the better part by its pleasure or pain, but may suffer that in isolated purity to examine and reach out towards and apprehend some of the things unknown to it, past, present, or future. And which has in like manner tamed his passionate part, and does not after quarrel fall asleep with anger still awake within him, but if he has thus quieted the two elements in his soul and quickened the third, in which reason resides, and so goes to his rest, you are aware that in such case he is most likely to apprehend the true. While the epithemitikon, especially when stimulated by means of excessive eating and drinking, is prone to generate all kinds of unlawful and monstrous images, the dreamer has a good chance to receive illuminating dreams if he arouses his logistikon before going to sleep. When he has reached a state of clear self-consciousness, with his mind focused on the unknown, he might be granted moments of clairvoyance, which is a way of touching upon the truth, this aletheias, aptite, completely different from the mantic frenzy referred to in the Timaeus. Plato describes what might be revealed from such a veridical dream in terms of typical seer's knowledge as a fragment of what happened or what is or what will be. Thus, the power of prophetic insight is granted both to the dreams of the logistikon and the irrational oracular visions of the liver. Let us leave the Greek philosophical and critical tradition and go further to the Roman times and finally come to Cicero. Marcus Tullius Cicero, as you all know, was a Roman statesman, lawyer, scholar, philosopher, whose extensive writings include treatises on rhetoric, philosophy, politics, and who is considered one of Rome's greatest orators and thinkers. He introduced into Latin the arguments of the chief schools of Hellenistic philosophy and created a Latin philosophical vocabulary. One of the charges that have most frequently been leveled at Cicero by contemporary readers is the supposed inability to work out an authentically original set of philosophic views. Such a conviction might be fostered by a number of factors. In the first place, Cicero himself declared that there are many to whom he yields precedence in knowledge of philosophy, of course Plato and the others, and that he could rather lay claim to the orator's peculiar set of abilities. Also, his frequent explicit reminders to the doctrine of thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, and Stoics in his written works he often led scholars to charge him of mindless eclecticism. Cicero's voluminous corpus of writings allows the reader to trace the seeds of an authentically pioneering political theory, one that might give us insights into a network of key philosophical questions to which he seems to give pride of place. Justice, justitia, equity, equitas, the nature of the res publica, and its most desirable internal arrangement, the best regime, the role of natural law, and individual virtues in shaping the moral textures of the members of the societas humana. Here is the list of Cicero's philosophical works, where we can see that Cicero wrote De Divinatione in 45 actually. Cicero's De Divinatione is often not neglected, having the reputation of being the least philosophical of all Cicero's dialogues, despite its significance for the history and philosophy of science. Traditionally, it was portrayed as Cicero's attack on Roman religion, but more recent scholarship has questioned this view. The Divinatione is divided into two books. Today we will talk only about the first book. In the first book, the author's brother Quintus tries to establish some arguments for divination, mostly appealing to examples of divination. In the second book, Marcus, the author himself, or rather the character, in the dialogue, attempts to undermine his brother's arguments. You should see on this slide the old edition of this philosophical work. It is from our library, from our Department of Classics, from our Faculty of Philosophy, and some of you maybe can see, but it is from year 1590. Now you can see the beginning of this philosophical work. It says, there is an ancient belief handed down to us even from mythical times and firmly established by the general agreement of the Roman people and of all nations, that divination of some kind exists among men. This the Greeks call mantiken, that is, the foresight and knowledge of future events. A really splendid and helpful thing it is, if only such a faculty exists. Now, our Marcus, our character, is going to tell us this, if only such a faculty exists. Since by its means, man may approach very near to the power of gods. In this Cicero's work, we find records of the lost sources on oneirology. For example, we see that Cicero used Chrysippus, but maybe also Antiphon's treatises on dreams. He says, but let us leave oracles and come to dreams. In his treatise on this subject, Chrysippus, just as Antipater does, has assembled a mass of trivial dreams, which he explains according to Antiphon's rules of interpretation. We saw some of those rules. I will not read it all, but it is too long. At the end of his account on dreaming and precognitive dreams, Cicero cites the above-mentioned passage on dreams from Plato's Republic. So I will not go into details, but it would be interesting to see some details are not the same as in the original. So it was not just translation, it was some kind of free interpretation, yes. Not really free, but interpretation, yes. Something between translation and interpretation. As you can see from English translation. It is not the same as it was Plato's Republic. It is similar. When a man goes to sleep, having the thinking and reasoning portion of his soul, languid and inert, but having that other portion, which has in it a certain brutishness and wild savagery, immoderately gorged with drink and food, then does the latter portion leap up and hurl itself about in sleep without check. In such a case, every vision presented to the mind is so devoid of thought and reason that the sleeper dreams that he is committing incest with his mother, or that he is having all lawful commerce with gods and men, and frequently too with beasts, or even that he is killing someone and staining his hands with impish bloodshed, and that he is doing many vile and hideous things recklessly without shame. Without those two lines, he goes further, but on the other hand, when the men whose habits of drinking and eating are wholesome and temperate, surrenders himself to sleep, having the thinking and reasoning portion of his soul eager and erect, and satisfied by a feast of noble thoughts, and having that portion which feeds on carnal pleasures, neither utterly exhausted by absence nor cloyed by overindulgence, for as a rule, the edge of thought is dulled, whether nature is starved or overfed. And when such a man, in addition, has that third portion of the soul, in which the fire of anger burns, quieted and subdued, thus having the two rational portions under complete control, then will the thinking and reasoning portion of his soul shine forth and show itself keen and strong for dreaming, and then will his dreams be peaceful and worthy of trust. And at the end, he says, I have reproduced Plato's very words, not very words, but words. In the meanwhile, between the reference to Antiphon and the citation from Plato, Cicero gives a few examples of precognitive dreams from the Greek mythology and history, and also from the Roman past. At one point, Cicero cites the verses from the drama of Accius, Brutus, and in those verses, the last king of the Romans, Tarquin the Proud, talks about the dream in which he was killed. You can see on the side, this is the 16th century depiction of Tarquin the Proud, of course. The end of the Roman monarchy is presented in our sources as an episode in the dramatic saga of the family of the Tarquins. It may be useful to summarize a bit the main outlines of this famous story, which, though immortalized in Livy's prose and in verses of Shakespeare, may not be familiar to everyone. According to the story, Tarquinius Superbus was overthrown in 509 BC by a group of aristocrats who set up a republican government under two elected annual magistrates, the consuls. The incident that prompted the coup was the rape of Lucretia by Sextus Tarquinius, the tyrant's second son. The vicious Lucretia killed herself, and the outrage provoked by this tragic tragedy led to an uprising against the ruling family. Curiously enough, the leaders of the revolt were themselves close relatives of the tyrant. They included Junius Brutus, the king's nephew, and Tarquinius Collatinus, his cousin and husband of the unfortunate Lucretia. Her father, Lucretius, was also in the plot, along with an influential friend, Valerius Publicola. The king, who was conducting a war against Ardea, hastened back to Rome on hearing news of the coup, but found the gates barred against him. Meanwhile, the leaders of the revolt went to Ardea and won over the army, which expelled the king's sons. Brutus and Tarquinius Collatinus became the first consuls, and Brutus made the people swear never again to tolerate the king and to punish it with death anyone who tried to restore the monarchy. He then proposed that all members of the Tarquin clan should be banished. He himself escaped the effects of this measure because he was related to Tarquin through his mother. But his colleague, Collatinus, was a member of the gens and consequently had to resign his office and leave the city. His place as a consul was taken by Valerius Publicola. So this is the dream of Tarquin the Proud. Would you dare call, Cicero is telling us, would you dare call the famous dream of Tarquin the Proud a myth? He describes it himself in the following lines from the Brutus of Accius. At night's approach, I sought my quiet coach to soothe my weary limbs with restful sleep. Then in my dreams, a shepherd near me drove, a fleecy-haired, whose beauty was extreme. I chose two brother rams from out the flock and sacrificed the commander of the twain. And then with lowered horns, the other ram attacked and bore me headlong to the ground. Now observe how the diviners interpreted this dream. It is not strange, O king, that dreams reflect the day's desires and thoughts, its sights and deeds, and everything we say or do awake. But in so grave a dream as yours, we see, a message clearly sent. And thus it warns, beware of him you deem bereft of wit, and rate no higher than a stupid ram, lest he, with wisdom armed, should rise to fame and drive you from your throne, the sun's changed course. Now, we are now in the 19th, 20th, and the 21st century. Dreaming is still a mystery of human and not just human cognition, because we know that our pets are also dreaming, although it has been studied experimentally for more than a century. The neurophysiological correlates of dreaming are still unclear, and many questions remain unresolved. Do the representations that constitute the dream emerge randomly from the brain, or do they surface according to certain parameters? Is the organization of the dream's representations chaotic, or it is determined by rules? We still do not know when it happens during the night, how long it lasts, whether we can recall its entire content, or how to control it. Nonetheless, scientific research has managed to produce considerable information about the phenomenology and physiology of dreaming, and has improved our understanding of this fascinating phenomenon. Dreaming was first investigated on experimental level in the 19th century. Calkins published the first statistical results about dreaming and argued that some aspects of dream content could be quantified. Later, questionnaires and automatic analysis of the lexical content of dream reports allowed psychologists to show that the dream content has some precise phenomenological characteristics. According to psychological studies, visual imagery occurs more frequently in dreams than imagery of other senses, touch, taste, and others. The dream drama is mostly lived by the dreamer from a first-person perspective. Some elements of real-life events previously experienced by the dreamer often contribute to the scene of the dream. Most often, the dream sequence is not within the dreamer's voluntary control. The dreamer may be convinced during the dream that the dream story is real. The dream report is often full of people interacting with each other, discussions, fights, pursuit, and so on. The current concerns of the subject may also be found in the content of his or her dreams, and many aspects of the subject's daily life were found to influence dream content, including new events, musical practice, religious beliefs, chronic pain, mood, and so on. In conclusion, results from experimental psychology allows us to better understand the phenomenology of dreaming. Still, what are the current hypotheses about dream functions? First hypothesis that there is no function. At the end of the 20th century, the neurologist Alan Hobson proposed a theory that deprived dreaming of any function. Because dreams are so difficult to remember, he says, it seems unlikely that attention to their content could afford much in the way of high-priority survival value. Okay. Next is psychological individualism. Jouvet speculated that dreams could be involved in psychological individualism and in the stability of the dreamer's personality. Jouvet's hypothesis is that the paradoxical sleep restores neuronal security that was modified during the day to preserve the expression of the genetic program that codes for psychological characteristics. Okay? The third, the threat simulation theory. The Finnish psychologist Antti Revonsuo proposed a hypothesis called threat simulation theory, which explains the fearful characteristics of dream content. According to this theory, dreams serve as virtual training places to improve threat avoidance or threat fighting ability. Next is emotional regulation. Cartwright's team suggested that dreaming may actually moderate mood overnight in normal subjects. The team strengthened this hypothesis by showing that among subjects who were depressed because of a divorce, those who reported more negative dreams at the beginning of sleep and fewer at the night's end were more likely to be in remission 1 year later than the subjects who had fewer negative dreams at the beginning and more at the end of the night. Memory consolidation, finally, a current mainstream hypothesis in cognitive neuroscience, credits sleep and dreaming with a role in memory consolidation. Is there hypothesis on predicting the future? Some kind of hypothesis, not hypothesis, but some results are going in that way. According to a review published in 2019, there have been 4 experiments on precognitive dreaming that have done a decent job of preventing research fraud. In each of these, participants were told they'd be seeing an image the next day and were asked to try and dream about what it would be. In the morning, they wrote a report about what they'd dreamed. After they'd made the report, the image was selected from a few different possibilities by a random number generator. Finally, judges who didn't know which target had been selected saw all the possible targets and made a judgment about which target was most similar to the dream report. 3 of those 4 experiments, his results which indicated the dreamers were able to predict the target. If these results are true, it means that there is a direct interaction between each human mind and the rest of the world, which is scary a little bit. So, the conclusion. We could say that at the premonitory dream of Tarquin the Proud, we will easily conclude that the dream content has some elements which are observed in experimental psychology, such as visual imagery, a first-person perspective, and the dream sequence is not within the dreamer's voluntary control. So Tarquin's account of his dream, legendary or not, experienced or imagined more than 2 millennia ago, is pretty much similar to something that some of us, or better, some of our politicians might have. Moreover, when we compare modern hypotheses about dream functions with the ancient interpretation of the dream of Tarquin the Proud, we can see that the ancient interpreters mentioned something that could be related to theories from experimental psychology, such as the threat simulation theory and emotional regulation. And finally, we can conclude that the dream of Tarquin the Proud and its interpretation could be related to research of dream content and functions in experimental psychology, and the modern scientific research still has a limited understanding of dreaming, and therefore differences from ancient interpretations are not as great as one might expect.
Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting us this fascinating topic I've been working on recently. And I would like to ask you, is there any semantics related to the topic of dreams in Latin? I mean, the ways how different authors express the visions, like vidi, what coloring of language do they use, and is there any theoretical manual, like, for example, Oneirokritika by Artemidorus in Greece, in Latin, written on this topic? Thank you very much.
We are now talking about verses, and verses are from the 1st century, 1st century BC, which was on our slide. So we can't talk about terminology at that moment in Roman history. But of course, later, when some other things happened, like Cicero's vocabulary and accommodation to philosophical and other discourses, then that it was possible. But in this period, it was not possible, and because of that, I was amazed when I saw that passage, because it is written, it is said by normal, common words, but the ideas are pretty much like ours. So yeah, it was my idea to show you that. But about terminology, I'm not doing it still now, but you may say something about that if you are in that topic now. Are you working on Artemidorus?
I've been writing a paper on evidentiality in Latin visions, especially in the Old Testament, in Jerome's translation, and there is a fantastic research on the topic how we can express different ideas, like by the particle ecce, for example, we can introduce a vision, dream, which gives you credibility that the dreamer has really seen something which has been given by a supernatural force to him. So these kind of things I'm interested in. Yes. So maybe we can exchange later on during the break.
You're a much better expert than me, so.
But thank you very much.
I will learn from you.
No, it's just mutual. Thank you, Dragana.